Coming up on This Week in Space, SpaceX has plans to go public in 2026. NASA loses contact with their Mars Maven probe at the Red Planet. And if you've wondered about the roots of commercial space operations in orbit, well, they go back to Russia. And Jeff Manber, who was there at the start and now at Voyager Technologies, is going to show us how.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 189, recorded on December 12th, 2025, Privatizing Orbit. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the Privatizing Orbit edition. I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief at Astro Magazine, as you all know, and I'm here with my favorite junior space cadet, Tarek Malik, editor-in-chief for Space.com. Hello, partner.
Hello, who are you calling Junior? Also, Privatizing Orbit. That's a pretty good title for this episode. Very excited about it.
Well, I'm back. So things are going to be okay this week. You did a great job last week, by the way.
Thank you.
I listened shortly after got back from behind the Great Firewall, and I enjoyed it. And I appreciate that you tossed a couple of recognitions my way. You didn't need to do that, but it's clear that my influence extends beyond my large gravitational field into the ether.
Also, we got a letter from Simon who said that it wasn't the same to not have Rod there. So you were missed. Well, okay, also, thank you, Simon. Chopped liver. Sheesh.
But that could mean a couple of things. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't as good. It may mean that it's better when I'm not there. This week we're going to be joined by. This week we'll be joined by one of the original Space Buccaneers, and I really mean that, Jeffrey Manber. His list of accomplishments is long and storied. And when you hear him speak, you'll understand what I mean. He's currently with Voyager Space working on their various programs, including the Starlab space station, but he really was one of the first people into the whole commercial space thing when it was just about impossible to do. So this is a guy that had no doubts about himself and didn't take no for an answer. And I'm just kind of knocked out by his resume. So I'll stop gushing now and say, before we start, please don't forget to do us a solid. Make sure to like, subscribe, and whatever other things you can do on podcasts to let the world know you love us, because that keeps us on the air and keeps everybody here happy. Now, have a space joke from Phil Stanley.
Phil!
Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Rod.
Of all the objects in the solar system, which is Mother Earth's favorite?
I don't know. Which one?
Her son.
It's good.
He's using my newest sound effect. I've heard that some people want to send us into a solar orbit when it's joke time in the show, but you can help by sending us your best, worst, or most indifferent space joke at twit@twit.tv, just like he did, because we need your brilliance. Clearly, when you leave it to us, it's not great. All right. And now, let's move on to, cue it, Headline News.
Headline News. Did I nail it? I don't know. Did I do, John?
Sounds about right. But we don't know till we hear it downstream. All right.
That's right.
So you got to lead with the lead. SpaceX plans to go public with an IPO.
Oh my gosh.
So this has been talked about for years. Only the very wealthy got to invest in SpaceX. Now the less wealthy will be able to invest in SpaceX. But the big head scratcher for me has been, why the heck would Musk do this when it's going to tie his hands? So he's got a lot of wacky ideas. You know, Mars by 2020, Mars by 2022, Mars by 2024.
Do you really think it's going to tie his hands?
Yes, because if he says, hey, I'm going to build 1 million Optimus robots and then I'm going to send 500,000 of them to Mars and I'll do it in 6 months, his shareholders are going to go, what the hell are you talking about? You're risking our money.
I think that the promises might change, but I do not. After a meeting with Tesla investors at the first Starship launch, I do not believe that the people that invest in space. We should talk about the IPO first, and then we can talk about this part real quick.
Yeah, tell us the story.
So this actually came out of the Wall Street Journal and the Information, where last week they reported that after we had our episode, that SpaceX was reportedly planning an IPO. Now, like you said, we've always been wondering if they were ever going to go public, and so it was kind of weird that this kind of behind the scenes reports from Wall Street Journal and the Information were breaking this, and like, is it really true? Well, Bloomberg followed up with their own report. saying that if they did this, they could be valued at 1.5 trillion, which is crazy. They could raise something like $30 billion, which would make it one of the most, if not the most, the largest IPO in history. I think the last one, according to Ars Technica, which I really think people should go and read Eric Berger's piece. And the reason why is because after he posted it and shared it with the world, Elon Musk commented on it and said, accurate, which means they're doing the thing, right? So, apparently Elon and the folks at SpaceX see that the time is either right for now to raise a bajillion, well, 30 billion, up to dollars in investment, which they could then put towards the development of whatever they want, right? The Starship, all the Starship things,
well, wait,
Starlink,
you say whatever they want
that they can sell by the
not
the
whatever
investors.
he wants. He's now got to go to his a new board of directors, I assume.
Yeah.
Run by the biggest investors and make a case for things. And you know what? They still haven't closed a business case for Mars.
Well, but this is the part that I wanted to bring up. I
Well,
think,
then do.
Well, I'm doing it now.
Okay.
I do think that unlike perhaps other IPOs where it's like, okay, we're going to be shackled to the investors now and we have to deliver on the returns. I think that the type of high-powered investor in SpaceX is going to be someone that is in it for the long haul because they've seen what the company can do over time if you stick with it. When Elon came out in the early 2000s and it's like, we're going to start reusing the rockets, I remember people laughing at them, and now they're doing it multiple times a week.
It took
right?
Steve Jurvetson to step up and say, "I'll get you money."
Yeah.
And everybody else was watching that the Falcon 1 not fly.
But I believe that there are people that are fundamentally committed to Elon, one way or another, and then also to SpaceX and that vision one way or another, that they will just be in it for the long haul no matter what. And that there is a very public acknowledgement that his timelines are usually not the actual timelines, that things take longer than what he says. And so I think that acceptance really will keep at least some of the flexibility there. There is still the need to return the investment, quarter over quarter over quarter, which could lead to a change, but it might lead to a more effective change where things are actually
and it might add some sanity to some of the wackier things he said over the years.
as a journalist,
and it might add some pressure to get Starship flying
exactly.
quicker than they have been. Yeah.
And as a journalist, I, for one, welcome the addition of being a publicly held company, which then means that your records are now available for the public to review.
Yes.
So I'm very excited for that part, for sure. Looking forward.
All right. Well, from that, moving to a sadder note, NASA has lost contact with the Maven Mars orbiter. Maven's one of the more recent arrivals. Part of a trio of orbiters is Maven, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and Mars Odyssey. Both of those are older. The sad part here, besides we don't like losing a spacecraft unplanned, is that this trio of orbiters is our primary link with the rovers that are still operating on the planet and will be. And without them, your bandwidth is reduced dramatically because now you can only get radio signals directly from the rover. Now, the thing about Maven was it was in a particularly high orbit, so it actually was able to, quote, see, unquote, the rover for longer periods of time than the ones that are orbiting faster. And I think it's Mars Odyssey is scheduled to time out within a couple of years because it's depleted its fuel, right?
Yeah. So Odyssey is slowly on its own road for retirement. Maven Maven launched in 2013 and it arrived a short time later, and so it is about 10 months later after that, and so it is in well into like its post primary mission phase. But you're right. Like in addition to studying the atmosphere, Maven's primary mission was to really try to understand where Mars's atmosphere went. Like, how did it lose its water over time? That solar wind stripping and whatnot. Where did the methane come from? Where did it go? Over time, all of that stuff. Maven was kind of the go-to orbiter for that on the NASA side, and it also worked in concert with Odyssey, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, also Europe's probes with Mars Express and Trace Gas Orbiter to serve as that connection for the rovers that are working on the ground. So losing any spacecraft like that is kind of unfortunate to see. I believe that they lost contact with Maven when it was on the far side of the planet too. So we don't know what happened. It went behind Mars, as in terms of line of sight with Deep Space Network, and then it was gone. And so they are trying to work to resurrect it.
Do you think it was aliens? Maybe it's.
I hope it was aliens. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Maybe it was Mark
Watney.
Yeah.
Well, or it may have been the Klingons, because we have yet another roll, the drum roll, Starfleet or Star Trek franchise. Thank you, John. Starfleet Academy. So the preview was put up a couple days ago. I watched it. It was 4 or 5 minutes of overacting, which I would characterize as more ham than a pig farm, and with visual effects that look like a video game. Now, give me a break. As you may have heard once or twice, I worked on Trek. I worked on visual effects. We were forced in
I worked on track as one day.
Shut up.
Space Nine, this is the smart one.
Because we had physical models, we were sort of constrained because it was really expensive to do a shot, right? It took like 10, 15 passes on the motion control system. John's freaking out. To do a shot, and then you had to composite them, and you had to paint in the phasers and all that. So because it was expensive, it kind of minimized how many VFX shots you could drop in, right? Mm-hmm. Which is not necessarily a good thing, but it does force you to be a little more conservative in your storytelling. Then an Enterprise came along, and I thought was good. They were able to use CGI. That allowed them to express the stories a little more fully. But the last couple of Trek spinoffs I've watched, it's like there's 47 things happening on the screen. There's big ships and little ships and blobs and tentacles and God knows what else. And you're thinking, Jesus Christ, guys, get a sense of story here. You're not guiding me through the narratives. Sorry, I'm having an editorial moment here. You're just throwing everything you got, and it gets a little tiring, and it really looks like a crappy video game.
So
what is with this middle-aged captain's hair? Every moment she's in the trailer, she looks like she just rolled out of bed. And her hair is kind of stuck in her mouth and stuff, and it's like, well, what is this all about?
All right, well, I'm not going to give spoilers. I don't know if I can share what I know about the show, but I know a lot about the show.
Oh, are you an insider now?
So, but I'm pretty sure it sounds like Rod doesn't like the trailer that he saw. So I think that this is really exciting to have this type of a show because it's kind of like a reset for Paramount to be able to do. And Holly Hunter is the captain of this of this new show.
That was
Starfleet
Holly
Academy.
Hunter?
Yeah, it's Holly Hunter. Yeah, and she plays a very interesting captain. I'm going to say
3'11" Holly Hunter.
Yeah, and Paul Giamatti is the big bad.
Yeah,
as shown in the trailer.
He's fun. Yeah,
yeah, and it's very interesting because this is a show that is telling you who the big bad is right up front. About and how is that going to evolve over 10 episodes? I think it's really exciting.
And gosh, the big bad looks just like a human being with a little bit of rubber on his head, which is this is a Trek staple. It's like, can you give me a good CGI alien with eye tentacles and stuff, and not just another human?
He is a Klingon Tellarite hybrid, my friend. Like,
oh well, that explains everything.
Come on, and for people that are wondering, the show is set in like the Discovery universe, which means it's like in the far, like 30 whatever century.
Because that's part of canon.
Sorry. We are going to have a whole show about this show when it comes out. You know what? We are going to talk about the state of Star Trek. We're going to get someone in. Maybe we can get Mike Okuda.
Get one of the stars. I know Mike. We can get Mike probably.
And then we're gonna talk about it, and they're gonna point for point address all your issues because I think it's gonna.
No,
be
they're
great.
just gonna beat me senseless because I'm such an animal about it.
I think it's gonna be a great show. I've been hoping for a Starfleet Academy show since I collected all of the comics when I was a kid, and now we're actually. I can see everyone if you can't. If you're not watching
someday.
That could still happen, Rod Pyle. That could still happen.
It's true. It's true. It's not too late. And for sure, if that offer comes along, it'll go to you and not me because you get all the goodies.
And I will drop you like a bad habit if I get to go to space, Ron. So,
well, that doesn't surprise me. Okay, I guess we've kind of ground that one into the ground, huh?
By the way, it premieres in January if anyone is listening. So, Starfleet Academy.
Before I forget, I just want to thank you and Mike Wall for picking up the baton last week. I thought you did a great job. Listened to it when I got back from China. Thought it was good.
Thank you. That's high praise from Rod. Thank you.
You picked a great week to go. You picked a great week to leave because Jared Isaacman got confirmed. So
what is this? What is this in the Slack channel? Is that me after my 100,000 steps in 5 days? So for those who don't know, my partner and I went to China, and she signed us up with a local guide in a region called Tianjin, which is where they filmed Avatar. So it's all those big vertical rock stacks that are so amazing.
The flying mountains.
The only problem is there is one set of escalators and an elevator for these mountains, but for most of it, you take stairs. So when I say 100,000 steps in 5 days, I don't mean we were strolling down the street of a village. I mean, these were stairs, and they're carved out of stone. Some are 4 inches high, some are 6 inches high, some are 2 inches high, some are a foot high. So you're constantly, if you're my age, looking down, trying to make sure you don't stumble and break every bone you've got. Because China in the old days didn't believe in banisters. So if you trip at the top of that 1,000-foot thing you just climbed up, you're not stopping till you get to the bottom in a bloody heap. So anyway, it was great fun. Enjoyed it a lot. And Tarek, you really should go someday. Because
I hope one day to get there. I hope one day. So it'd be nice to see a Long March launch.
John,
awesome.
Eventually I'm going to have reason to come back up to Northern California, and I am going to pay you back for that graphic you just put up in Discord. Is that Betty White?
No, that's just you know what we should do, Rod?
It's generic senior citizen. Yes. What should we do?
We should probably go to a break.
Oh, you wanted to do a show? Okay.
We forgot that.
All right.
Clip.
We will be back. We will be back in just a moment with Jeffrey Manber, the original Space Buccaneer. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Leo Laporte, host of This Week in Tech and many other shows on the Twit Podcast Network. Can you believe it? 2026 is around the corner. So this, my friends, is the best time to grow your brand with Twit. Nobody understands the tech audience better than we do. We love our audience, and we know how to effectively message to them. We develop genuine relationships with brands, creating authentic promotions that resonate with our highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts. Over 90% of Twit's audience is involved in their company's tech and IT decision-making. Can you believe that? 90%, 88% have actually made a purchase based on a Twit post-read ad. No one comes close. We're the best at this. As one Twit fan said, I've bought from Twit TV sponsors because I trust Leo and his team's knowledge of the latest in tech. If Twit supports it, I know I can trust it. You cannot buy trust like that. Well, actually, you can. You can buy an ad on Twit. All our ads are unique. They're read live by our expert hosts, Micah Sargent, me. We simulcast all during the shows on our social platforms, so everybody can be watching live. One of our customers, Haroon Mir, the founder of Thinks Canary, he's been with us since 2016. Since 2016, he said, we expected Twit to work well for us because we were longtime listeners who, over the years, bought many of the products and services we learned about on various Twit shows, and we were not disappointed. The combination of the very personal ad reads and the careful selection of products that Twit largely believes in gives the ads an authentic, trusted voice that works really well for our products. 10 out of 10 we'll use again. Thank you, Haroon. We love you, and it's been 9 years. That's the proof, right? Partnerships with Twit offer valuable benefits, including over-delivery of impressions. You get presence on show episode pages, so there's a link right there that our audience can click on. We're in the RSS feed descriptions, a link there too, and social media promotion. Our full-service team will craft compelling creative to elevate your brand and support you throughout your entire campaign. I work on the copy myself to make it authentic, to make it real. If you want to reach a passionate tech audience through a network that consistently over-delivers, please contact us directly. Partner@twit.tv. That's the email address, partner@twit.tv. Let's talk about how we can help grow your brand. Or just go to twit.tv/advertise for more information. I look forward to working with you. Thanks for listening.
And we are back with Jeffrey Manber, who is, I love your title, the special representative to the chairman and CEO of Voyager Space, which is a long thing to have on your conference badge. But as I like to think of you, the original Space Buccaneer. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Great to be on 189, I think, episode 180. Take your time inviting me, but that's fine. That's fine.
Well, thanks for coming. And I just, so I have to have a moment to gush here. I've been following your career off and on since the 80s. And I remember the first time I read about you and your work with the Soviet Union and then later the Russians. I thought, who is this guy who runs where angels fear to tread? I mean, this was amazing stuff in that time. And for those of us in the community, there were a lot of people that were kind of these, I'll be a little harsh, false prophets of new space, right? Coming up, I'm going to start a rocket company. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But most of them either didn't do much or just did a little bit or ended up in prison or who knows what, But you really kind of jumped in a way that was unique and prospered for the most part in something that at that time, I mean, it's still hard, but at that time was just proved over and over again to be almost impossible. Yeah. So I'll stop gushing now, but I just have to, one of the fun things about doing this podcast is that Tarek and I agree we bring in people that are smarter and more successful than us, hoping that something that they've done will rub off on us. Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you, it's every once in a while, I speak a lot at universities, and someone will come up and say, Jeffrey or Mr. Manber, I want to have a career like you. And I go, no, you don't. Okay, no, you do not. So, working, opening the door, carried over the first contract between NASA, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Okay, I think that was 91, 92. Did the first commercial contract on the brand new Mir. That was with a pharmaceutical company. I'm going backwards in like 89. So yeah, but it's all about implementation. I mean, I learned early on, not to jump in, but, I don't talk as much now because it's all about implementation. Mm-hmm. And I did also the only Chinese project on the International Space Station. Oh. And that was with Beijing Institute of Technology. NASA couldn't do it. Everybody thought we couldn't work with China because of the Wolf Amendment, right. Which prohibits NASA from working with China. And I did something unique in Washington. I read the Wolf Amendment, and I saw that there was a commercial pathway, and got permission from first the Obama administration, and then the Trump folks gave me permission to launch with Beijing Institute of Technology, synthetic DNA project. But I digress. But the point to just follow on what you're saying, Rod, was afterwards I met with the head of the manned China Space Agency, and he said, we have so many Americans come over, famous people who say, we're going to get you on the International Space Station. He said, and you came. I never heard of you. You got us on the International Space Station. Now paths have gone a different way. We can talk about that. But yes, it's all about implementation.
Well, and let me just back up a step here, because I was surprised to see that you had actually been a space journalist in the 1980s.
Of course I was a space journalist.
Which is not the most promising way to start a 6 or 7 figure career, I've found. But tell us about that, if you would.
Well, I got involved, simply put, because when I was 21, I started a film magazine, much like Playbill, and it was distributed free at movie theaters in New York City, and glossy, very nice. First one on the cover was a very young Brooke Shields, and when I had in the parlance of today, I had a successful exit at 23. I had some money. What did I want to do? I said, well, I didn't like being the publisher of the film magazine. I hung out with the printers. I want to be a writer. That's exciting. And I sort of taught myself to write, and I became the go-to. And then the sexy thing at the time was the Reagan era and the commercial space era. People don't, of course, remember today, but after the 5th shuttle flight, the then Administrator Jim Beggs declared the era of commercial space. But anyway,
50 flights a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
50 flights a year, and the government's the controller of everything. And so I said, okay, I'll write about this new thing called commercial space. And in a few years, I became the go-to for the New York Times, for Business Week, for Aviation Week, for writing about that new thing called commercial space. Aviation Week started a publication called Commercial Space. It was a glossy, quarterly. And the crown and glory for me was one issue. I was like 60% of the content. I had a column. They interviewed me. I wrote a story, and I did 2 ghostwriting articles. Okay, I made my income. Tarek saying, "How do I get this gig?" You know, so I was 60% of the publication. I had enough of the rent for a year. So then I started a publication called. When I first got involved, I had a publication called Space Journal, which was a quarterly. I still have some of the copies. It's really good on where we're going in space. And then I started a newsletter called Space R&D Alert. And it tracked the research being done on the shuttle. I had subscribers. It was like, in those days, I don't remember the year. It's like 1990, 88. Okay. It was $500 a year. And I had a whole bunch of subscribers, and I was tracking what 3G was doing, what John Deere was doing, gallium arsenide, all the, who else? I forget now, but Charlie Walker, what he was doing. And so it was a good publication. And then I wrote a piece in the Sunday New York Times on what's happening in space. The next day, KPMG Pete Marwick called me. The New York Times was $400. And when I complained that it was $400, she said, "Darling, it's the honor of the New York Times." And the next day, Pete Marwick, at the time, the name, called me and said, "Would you do a piece? We're thinking of getting involved." They paid me 10 times the amount. I became a consultant and never looked back.
Nice.
So that's how, yeah.
Tarek, there are some secrets here that we've managed to miss for the last 30 years.
I know. We should all plan a successful exit from something so that we can do this.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, was like space, like, did it have a place in your heart before all of this? Is this something that like just it grew out of that exposure? In terms of like the commercial space that you're talking about, that progression that you just explained, or was there like a kernel, from when you were a kid or when you were in school, that it was always kind of there, like that was like an ember, if you will, ready to like burst into the flames that your career has become in a good way, like an inferno. Right. But you know what I mean. So
Tom Corbett and his Space Cadets.
I've got the books on my shelf.
Yeah, we had the 9 volumes or something of Astro and Roger Manning. I think I haven't looked at, and my older brother and I made a pact. By the time of the unforeseeable future of the year 2000, we would be on Mars. And so I must have been 6 or 7, and he was like 12, and we promised that we'd be on Mars. And then a few years ago, he looked at me and he said, "You just kept going. I gave up and had a life," And so I did have romantic visions, and like so many others, I didn't understand why it was taking so long. And to be serious, once I got to know NASA in the 80s, I understood why it was taking so long. And I should have just perhaps turned around, as so many good people did, and exit. But I stayed with it. You'll hear me say this maybe several times, but I was aghast what I saw in the 80s with NASA, the space agency. It was just horrible, the way it was run. It was not something America could be proud of. And I felt it was because there was no private sector. And so, yes, I had it. I mean, so many do, and they never pursue it. I could have easily gone to a launch once in a while. I could have started another career. and gone to a launch and be, that. But for some reason, I was just so, I thought there was so much potential. And it turned out I was right, but it took a little longer than I thought. I thought there was so much potential if we could unleash the private sector into what I saw as a government-controlled monopoly.
So you took the easy road into space entrepreneurship. Okay, we're going to take the easy road into a quick break, and we'll be right back, so stand by.
Hey everybody, it's Leo Laporte. You know about Mac Break Weekly, right? You don't? Oh, if you're a Macintosh fan or you just want to keep up what's going on with Apple, this is the show for you. Every Tuesday, Andy Anako, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell, and I get together and talk about the week's Apple news. It's an easy subscription. Just go to your favorite podcast client and search for Mac Break Weekly or visit our website, twit.tv/MBW. You don't want to miss a week of Mac Break Weekly.
So this may be a bit tangential, but you were in the mid-'80s, I guess, tapped by the Reagan administration to help form the Office of Space Commerce within the U.S. Department of Commerce. That must have been kind of a big thing for somebody who hadn't spent a lot of time in D.C.
Yeah, it was actually kind of cool. And so I had... with my writing and then becoming a consultant, I met a gentleman named Jim Samuels, who was setting up the first commercial space practice on Wall Street. And because of my writing, he brought me in to help him. We set up a commercial space fund. We raised $10 million. We put it in companies long forgotten now, like American Rocket, George Koopman, one of the first commercial launch vehicles. And after the Challenger accident, in the total way that sometimes these funds think, when the Challenger accident happened, Shearson Lehman, American Express shut their commercial space practice because they thought, oh, space is grounded. And we tried to explain to them that, unfortunately, you don't want to profit from tragedy, but this was now perhaps the beginning of the opportunity for everything we had been working for. But nonetheless, they shut it down. And then I met this another gentleman who called me up. He was one of the original entrepreneurs, first generation, with Deke Slayton, had the Conestoga, and there was others. And this guy, Russ Ramsland, he had Microgravity Research Associates doing gallium arsenide production on the shuttle. He sort of opened my eyes to how NASA was competing, and NASA was the biggest obstacle in the 80s to commercial space. And he called me up one day and said, tell me my wildest dreams. You're a Republican, aren't you? And I said, well, and he said, tell me another wild dream. Can you actually keep your mouth shut for some time and just, I'll bring you down to Washington. Turns out he knew the Bushes, and help set up the Office of Space Commerce. And the importance of it was, there was a guy named Bob Brumley, who I just been still in touch with, and he was the general counsel at the Commerce Department under Reagan. And he set up the Department of Transportation office, that still regulates launch vehicles. And that busted the NASA monopoly. Up until that moment, everything civilian, everything that we did civilian went through NASA. Totally not the way we run anything. And so then Bob reached out to me and said, would you like to help us set up commerce? That's the natural function of the Commerce Department, to support the space community. And I loved it. And so I came down to Washington. I said I'd be in Washington for a year. And we set up the office, and we began to work on creating a commercial space station done by the private sector to fight, to go against Ronald Reagan's freedom, which we thought was a debacle. It was a debacle, and it was later shut. I think we spent billions and never went anywhere. And so we had the private sector bidding for a commercial space station. Very simple, very small, would have saved this nation billions and billions of dollars and gotten us into true utilization of space decades ahead. So it was very good for me because it introduced me to Washington. And also it got me on the path, if you want to talk about it, with the Russians. So that was cool.
Well, I do want to talk about it because I think that was really fascinating. Because Jeffrey, I have to admit, I remember meeting you when we were talking about Nanoracks, way back when, and I had largely kind of equated you with Nanoracks and that whole effort and how it really kind of opened up science in a different way on the commercial side to the space station. Now you've got the airlock too, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised at just the detail and the experience that you had in kind of forging that bridge where, on the Russian-U.S. cooperation side in space, at a time that seemed like it was really shifting, like the grounds, I guess, were shifting a bit with the space program. And I'm just curious, I mean, was that like an organic growth from, your contacts with the space commerce, or did you see a very kind of a fulcrum or a linchpin opportunity from the shift from the Soviet Union to the Russia we know today, and where their storied space program at that point in time, really was at a changing point where you could have an impact and lead to some of the cooperation and the commercial ties that we've seen, I guess, since then.
I told you already that younger people come to me and say, I want to have a career like yours. How do I do it? And one of the things I say is, if you get a chance, work in the government for a brief period of time. Because if you do, all roads lead to you. I mean, you're sitting there and suddenly very influential people want to talk to you because you're, in the government. And so I'm like 6 weeks into my 1 year. It was a 1 year stint at the office to set up the Office of Space Commerce. And I'm about 6 weeks in, and a good friend of mine, Dr. Anthony Arrett, who had a space company called Payload Systems, doing pharmaceutical drug research. The shuttle was grounded, and he went out and signed a secret deal with the brand new Mir space station. And 6 weeks into my government experience, I'm sitting at my desk. Anthony comes in and says, I've just signed the secret agreement. I need an export license. Can you tell me how the heck I get an export license to do work with the Soviets? And I will say I have a book out called Selling Peace, my time working for the Russians, and I go into great detail on it. But what happened was we had to figure, so I went upstairs to Bob Brumley, who was sort of that Ronald Reagan, far-right, capitalism is a religion. And when I told him that the Soviets had done a commercial project with an American company to do pharmaceutical drug research in space, he was in heaven. He said, do it. Let's figure it out. And so we got an export license. And I say my contribution to world history in space is they had all these high-powered lawyers and all these things. And my contribution is, let's not call it a space project. On the export license, let's say it's permission to do a pharmaceutical drug research project in a Soviet laboratory.
Yeah.
True. Well, what's the difference? We all know on this podcast that space holds a special place, and it's good and it's bad. Politicians, they say, wait a second. NASA would have said, no, there's no way you can work on the space station Mir. And so NASA didn't really look at it. State Department didn't really look at it. We told DOD, okay, and it went around, it circulated, the export license was granted, and then I made a big mistake. I will now confess that I worked with, oh gosh, I'm going to forget, at the New York Times, Bill Broad at the New York Times. And we gave him the story, and it ended up page one. I asked him, why did it end up on the page one? He said, slow news day, but there it was. U.S. company signs, and I learned a lesson from that. When you're working in Washington and you win on policy, you let those opposed know. And that was a good lesson. And I don't know my age now, 28, 30 something. And so I didn't. And man, they tracked down the head of the Commerce Department on a golf course. Congressman Bill Nelson, the former senator, the former administrator, Congressman Bill Nelson declared this is illegal, and it wasn't. So I'm taking too much time on this, but this is how you get the...
What a turn for Bill Nelson, right?
Right. So anyway, so a year later, they're launching. And I'm now out of the government. I had done my 1 year stint. We set up the Space Commerce Department. And Anthony called me and said, would you like to come and see the launch? So I went to Moscow, went to the Soviet Union, and Anthony introduced me to the Soviets saying, this is Jeff who figured out a way, he's a believer in commercial space, and figured out a way to get my export license. Off in the corner of the room, There was the government people, Globcosmos it was called. And off in the corner of a room with these guys not talking, they were from a secretive organization called NPO Energia. They had done Sputnik, they'd done Gagarin, and they came up to me and said, "Do you want to work for us?"
Oh,
and so, long story short, I insisted on, as I learned the history, and then later someone else, a gentleman named Chris Farinetta, introduced me to the leadership. And the leadership was this tough SOB, Semyonov. And Semyonov said, "I want to be like a mainstream American businessman. I want to make money. I don't like my government. Okay, they're idiots. They're this." I mean, he was patriotic as can be. Absolutely patriotic. He was crusty, patriotic. When he signed the contract, he honored it. And I went to the Bush White House, and they said, this is good. And so I ended up, as I used to say in the 90s, if you wanted to work for the capitalists in space, you work for the Russians. And if you wanted to work for the socialists, you work for NASA. And so I have said that over and over. I said it in this administration. I've said it all the time. We ran a socialist space program. And I don't like socialism, and I worked for the capitalists in the 90s. Got a problem with that? And every time I say it that way, people who are like, "Oh, you work for the Russians." When I say it that way, I work for the free market capitalists in the 90s and early, 2000. And so we privatized the Mir with the European Bank of Reconstruction, and Oppenheimer and other investors. We did the first commercial astronauts. We did the first commercials, and I know, great stuff. Dan Golden has this whole renaissance now on LinkedIn. He has all these followers, but he hated it, and I didn't like that. He was opposed to the commercialization. I'm sorry. Okay, he was opposed, and it was ESA, European Space Agency, that first agreed that no longer would astronauts go up to a space station like the Mir for barter, for diplomatic purposes, for national prestige. No, if you wanted to fly up to the Mir, it was privatized. It was now owned by RKK Energia. It was on the Russian stock market. You wanted to fly, you pay. And ESA went first, and then Americans.
We have to fly into a commercial here, so hold on one second. Hold on to that thought, and we'll be right back.
Hey, everybody. Leo Laporte here, and I'm going to bug you one more time to join Club Twit. If you're not already a member, I want to encourage you to support what we do here at Twit. 25% of our operating costs comes from membership in the club. That's a huge portion, and it's growing all the time. That means we can do more. We can have more fun. You get a lot of benefits, ad-free versions of all the shows. You get access to the Club Twit Discord and special programming like the keynotes from Apple and Google and Microsoft and others that we don't stream otherwise in public. Please join the club. If you haven't done it yet, we'd love to have you. Find out more at twit.tv/clubtwit. And thank you so much.
So, Jeff, you kind of alluded to it, but could you talk a little bit about the Mir Core adventure? Because that did end up with a 70-day mission going to what was then a mothballed space station, but then it had a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah, I had, after several years, I had finally decided to leave the Russians. I mean, enough. And we had a very nice, amiable parting. And I returned to the United States and working with the space community. And then one day, gentlemen Walt Anderson and Rick Tumlinson, really a sad story with Walt. He was really the Elon Musk of his time, had accumulated wealth and was investing in all sorts of projects. And they called me up and said, we want to, the Mir was being deorbited. The Russian space station Mir was being deorbited. And there was much more discussion then than there is today on the ISS. Much discussion, it should not be deorbited. And Walt and his people called me and said, we want to buy the Mir. And, you're still Mr. Energia, they owned it. And I said, you can't buy the Mir, but maybe there's some way we can work it. And I reached out to the Russians, my former colleagues, and I said, I know you won't sell it. Would you lease it? And they came back and said, by fax machine, they came back by fax and said, yes, we would lease it. And that was a frantic effort because the Mir was decaying and coming down. They had a Progress cargo ship on the launch pad. They were scheduled to launch in like 80 days. I may be wrong on it's like 60 days, something like that. And it was going to start the deorbit. We flew out to Moscow on Walt's Gulfstream and incredible negotiations, and Walt just reached out and wired several millions of dollars. And on the basis of that, Semyonov, the head of Energia, gave the order that Progress would launch, and instead of bringing the Mir down, it would go up. It would boost it up. And the Russian government was against it. As I like to say, the Russian government was very pro-American in those days, and the Russian Space Agency was opposed. They wanted the Mir down. The American, Dan Golden, went crazy. But it was owned. It was owned by Energia. They had every right. We had every right to do this. I will say I don't like the documentary Orphans of Apollo. It's very professional, and Michael Pato did a great job. But it's not accurate. It makes it look like, I had a team in Holland. We raised business. It wasn't just philosophers. I had $179 million in backlog when the Americans forced the Mir down. I had signed with Michael Burnett of Survivor and NBC to do a game show where the winner would go to space. I had pharmaceutical companies. I had the Murdoch family, not Fox. They were coming in. I had signed $179 million. And we had a team. I had salespeople. We had an office, and we really produced. We were doing very well. And then the dot-com crash happened. Walt lost sizable capital, and his friends who were going to put in $10 million, $5 million to keep it going couldn't. And meanwhile, the Americans were increasing the pressure. But in the meantime, I guess the highlight of Mir Corp is we launched a two-person crew, the world's first commercial crew to space. And they were up there for 70-something days, very brave cosmonauts. The Mir had been shut for like 8-9 months. And later they told me when they opened it, there were just gobs of fluids and just things sounded like some Halloween haunted, house. I authorized $5 million to make the software connection, to modernize it, and suddenly what had been gray, blurry images of the Mir became crystal clear. It looked beautiful. We were the laughing stock of the world. People made fun of the Mir. When there was a leak in the Mir, they fixed it with duct tape, and it was the laughing stock of late night television. But oh man, we proved so many points. I spoke to Elon at that time. I spoke to Richard Branson. I spoke to a lot of people. And I think Mir Corp should be remembered at that first step. We showed that an entrepreneurial company could make commercial revenue from an orbiting platform. We showed that an entrepreneurial company could work with space agencies. We showed that there were markets in advertising, media, pharmaceutical. We really did a lot. And then finally the geopolitical and the financial brought it down.
Yeah. It's very interesting how things have changed in terms of like the industry from the environment that you felt, I guess, at that point in Mir Corp, and then now where it seems like there's much more reception, much more belief and what's the word? A reliance on that commercial approach to everything. And I'm very curious how what you experienced from Mir Corp prepared you for kind of the launch of Nanoracks, and then how that gets us to Voyager as well, because it does seem like a lot of the foundations about how to approach this enterprise in space were founded in that experience about working with the space stations in different countries. Now you've got Nanoracks, which is not just countries but also companies and students and universities, and then leading to a fully commercial space station with Starlab and Voyager. Was Nanoracks a locked deal? Like you knew you were going to do that in 2009?
No. So I'll say the Starlab is my fourth space station. I brought over to the Soviet Union a commercial contract to use the Soyuz as an escape vehicle for Space Station Freedom. So I did the only commercial contract on Freedom, and then so on, Mir, ISS, and now Starlab. So I kind of got this space station stuff down. I learned from Energia. I learned from the Russians how you make a space station sustainable, how you do true budgets. You can't just do a 6-year budget on a space station. You have to take into account solar flares and orbital decay. Okay, there's so many moving parts to a space station. I learned a great deal from the Russians, from Energia, from Mir. And in fact, I was very fortunate. When I came back the first time, before I started Nanoracks, there was a period before that where I couldn't get a job in this country. Just everybody was, you're too radioactive, you're working. And then the Columbia accident happened, that tragedy, and the Russians stepped up. I call them my Russians at the time. Energia stepped up, and they kept the ISS construction going at no cost. And then people were like, hey, Manber, that wasn't a stupid thing we were doing with the Russians. And so I sort of came back into the community. And I will say I was fortunate enough a year or so ago to get NASA's highest award, the Distinguished Public Service Medal, I think, if I have it right. And in the citation, it says, you went over to Russia. You learned about and taught them and they taught you free markets, open markets in space, and you returned and taught us. It says that in the citation. So that we have this ironic situation that in space the Russians were the first capitalists. I'm sorry, in low Earth orbit and manned in human rated space. But to answer your question, I came back and the two gentlemen had this idea for Nanoracks. They couldn't get any headway with NASA. NASA would not sign a Space Act agreement, would not. The idea was standardized research payloads, low cost. And then they called me up, Charles Miller called me up and said, we can't make a go of this. I'm going back into NASA. You want to do this thing? And I went to Bill Gerstenmaier, who I had met in Russia and became head of human spaceflight, very important to keeping human spaceflight going now at SpaceX. I said, you willing to work with me, Bill? And he said, if you can do for ISS what you did for Mir, I'll work with you. and so we signed a Space Act agreement in about 2 months. And yes, I took a lot of what I learned with the Russians on how you handle payloads, how you get things through the system, how you market, what you promise, what you don't promise, and most importantly, in the International Space Station system, if you're doing a payload from a country that's not an ISS member, you need permission from everybody. But no one had ever tried it because it was cumbersome. They didn't think the Russians would agree. Soon after Nanoracks started, we began doing CubeSats. Our first CubeSat was from University of Hanoi. Okay, what a world, okay? And NASA was, we don't know if we'll get permission from Russia. And they sent it over. They needed all permission of the ISS partners. 48 hours later, everybody, including the Russians, had agreed. And so, yes, the Nanoracks, I was able to launch Nanoracks and get the business and have the relations with the space agencies and again show that a private company could work on things that previously had been only for governments, manifest, that sort of thing. So that was instrumental.
That's awesome.
I love, this, what you said about the NASA award is kind of like Tom Hanks trying to remember, what was that little statue I got? It was a gold thing about this tall. That's a pretty big award you got.
As one does.
I'll tell you, when they called me and told me, I shouldn't say this, but when they called me, I was in a van and we were going somewhere and they said, we're giving you this. I said, thank you. They go, Jeff, this is America's highest award as a non-astronaut. And I said, does that mean I won? and she thought for a moment. She said, Yes, but you were always gracious about it. So and I'm never gracious about anything. So it's important. It meant something to me later because of the citation. The citation saying you went to Russia, because I was ridiculed for going to Russia. It still stings me. I was mocked. I was ridiculed. People said you're working. And there's the tragedy of the war now.
The commies and all that.
Right. But at the time it was a different, and I believe Mir Corp and my time working with Russia helped make America's space program stronger. I believe that.
Very well said. And we're going to make ourselves stronger by doing a break and earning some revenue, so stand by.
So, Jeff, you kind of walked us through like the origins of the commercialization of space stations. And now we're like on the precipice of what seems like a very exciting time with you and with the folks at Voyager. And you've got this new space station, Starlab, which I saw is getting, is making its way through the design reviews and all of that. It was really exciting to see. And but some of our listeners may not be familiar with Voyager Technologies and like the Starlab project. Can you kind of give them like a pocket description of what you're trying to build in orbit once the ISS retires?
Right. So I'll step back quickly and say that the ISS is retiring sometime of circa 2030. Yeah. And we cannot have a gap. Absolutely cannot have a gap like we did with humans and crew, and we had what's going back throughout history with our first space station, Skylab, and shuttle, and we just always have gaps. We cannot have a gap here, and so ISS is being retired, and NASA through 2 administrations now has a program called CLD, and there's several teams competing to be awarded. We think there will be 2 space stations. NASA in the United States has certainly learned that you need 2 of everything. It served us so well with cargo. It served us so well with crew, and it serves us so well with ISS. And so we will have 2 space stations, and we're very confident that we have the strongest. Starlab is huge. It's like 7 stories tall. We've signed a contract with Starship to launch us, and it's will be the heaviest piece of hardware ever launched by humanity. Wow. In terms of payload, it's 1-to-1 on American capabilities on ISS, so there will be no gap. There'll be the same amount of capability. It's completely being designed so that it is commercially sustainable. I'll give you an example. What does that mean? It means we don't really have to do spacewalks. Spacewalks are cool. Astronauts love them, but well, why do we do them? It's so expensive, so much training. Now, if you have to adjust the solar panels, if you have to fix something, it can be done automated from the inside. It has 3 stages. It's stunningly beautiful. We have a unique business model where we didn't really go out looking for vendors. We went out looking for partners, and we wanted to duplicate the International Space Station partnership only commercially now. So our major partner so we spun Voyager. So I had Nanoracks, and I sold Nanoracks to Voyager, and we won the proposal for the space station. And so what we wanted to do, the business model, was that Voyager spun it out into its own company, Starlab, and our major partners are Airbus for Europe, Mitsubishi Corporation for Japan, MDA that does the robotic arm for Canada. And so right there, we've duplicated the ISS, and of course ourselves for the United States. We've duplicated the ISS partnership without the Russians. Now we have other partners. Palantir is a partner. We have Brussels Company is a partner. And so we are very, very strong financially. We are raising capital. Voyager Technologies is a publicly traded company, and we have been very fortunate, the relationships we have with sources of capital. And so we are on our way. And we've recently announced that we've moved the manufacturing to Mashu. And so Starlab is being manufactured domestically in the United States, and investors from around the world are contributing. and which lowers our cost. We do not have financial issues. We are very, very confident. And then finally, in terms of, I'm anticipating your questions. I'm just jumping in. Is this okay, or should I stop?
No, it's all right, because we want to give people like an idea of what Starlab is.
But I do have a question before you proceed, if I can, just for some context here. We see in the news the comparisons between, well, we got Starlab and we got whatever's left of Blue Origin's plan, and then we've got VAST. And look how fast VAST is moving. Well, VAST is building a pretty small single module. And if I got this correct, your station is about 26 feet in diameter, almost 60 feet long, has the same cargo capacity as the ISS, and about half the total volume, pressurized volume of the ISS. So yours is larger than the multi-module Tiangong space station that China's put up.
And you raise a big deal. Yeah, you raise a great point. I'm sometimes too polite. We're over 7.5 meters in diameter. This allows true research. It allows long-term human habitability. Thank you. It's easy for you to say. And we wish everybody well. But for me, VAST is not a space station. It's just simply put, okay, I wish them well. But they need to have, the Dragon to attach. That is not a nation as great as ours. 40 years we've had humans in space. For me, VAST is a return to the shuttle era, okay, where you have human tended. It is not a space station. It's maybe wonderful, but it's a step in a different direction. I want our replacement, and we must have our replacement, not only for who we are as a nation, not only to continue the research and be 24/7, but to counter the Chinese and America's soft leadership. We have to go from ISS to true space stations.
So, man, more? I'm sorry.
Man, that's it. I'm out of here.
Well, there's always a pause after the sermon ends,
No,
but I know Tarek has a question.
Well, I was really struck by the fact that, first of all, how large it is, like 6 different floors with the layers and the stowage and everything, and that it's all launched in one piece, like you mentioned on Starship.
And the amount that it saves when VAST and Axiom say, we can sustain a space station, think of each launch. Each launch is $70-80 million. Okay, so you're talking about launching 3 modules, 5 modules, 6 modules, okay, 9 modules, okay, we're one launch, okay, and so it's a whole different. Also, we're not in the ISS orbit, which is inefficient for fuel. We're in the ISS orbit because people like me made us go up to meet the Russians, okay, but that was political reasons. You want to be lower, it saves you hundreds of millions of dollars. This is a sustainable business model on an extraordinarily large and beautiful space station.
Am I right? You're looking at an orbit that's like 500 kilometers. Is that right? Is that the same?
No, we're going to be, I'm not sure, but I'm talking about we're going to be about 43 inclination.
Oh, inclination.
Okay, inclination, because we're at 51 with station, but you burn to get up there. But we did it because the Russians couldn't come down to us. Yeah. And so, but that's not a good orbit. You waste money.
And Tarek, I'd forgotten to mention that the guy we're talking to was responsible for the orbital inclination of the ISS, which you can't say that about everybody that comes on this podcast. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Tarek.
Yeah. Would you say that he's inclined to...
That's actually good.
I get a good one in every now and then, not like that turkey one from last week. I apologize again for the turkey joke last week.
That was fine.
So, I mean, but even like, so you can see like the DNA, like the Bishop airlock, I think is, we just saw that in like the animation that there's a legacy for that.
So I'm going to interrupt you and say that when we proposed the Bishop, which we self-funded, there was no RFP. People said to me, "How did you get the Bishop airlock? I missed the RFP." There was no friggin' RFP. I went to NASA and said, "Look, we got to do better on the outside." But I want to tell you quickly because I know time's getting short. They said we don't do acronyms anymore. This Bishop. What does it stand for? And my team said, it's not an acronym. They go, what is it? They go, it's a chess piece. It's a chess piece. It sort of moves like a chess piece, and it's a chess piece so that Nanoracks can go outside the station. And secondly, that you get the confidence that we can build complex hardware on a human-rated station. So it's a chess piece for us.
And here I thought it was the android and aliens all this time.
Well, there you
Shut
go.
me down.
You get that
completely.
too. You get the sci-fi quality too. But like
There we
the commercial extensions. I mean, you've got Bishop. There's the inflatable room. It also, we should point out, Starlab's not inflatable. It's
Correct.
a metal station.
Correct,
you know,
correct.
so
Because inflatable is good because the government's paying for them to learn how to do inflatable to go to Mars.
Yeah.
Inflatable is not good for a space station, Leo. It wastes too much R&D. It's going to cost too much. So that's why we went with proven.
That's awesome. So Starship launch. I guess you're watching closely all of the tests to make sure they can get your
Yes,
station
but
up.
they've already done what all we need. We don't need the soft landing. It's already gone up, opened the door, and that's all we need. So we're very, very confident that by 29, Elon will figure Starship out. But we're very confident.
That's awesome.
So as long as it gets there, you don't care whether it comes back or not.
Correct.
Right?
That's
on them.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we're very confident that Voyager is a space station company. It has heritage on space station. It's not, a switch on off. If Starlab, something goes wrong, there goes the whole cash flow. We are sustainable. The Wall Street is supporting us. The research community is supporting us, and the international community is supporting us.
We should point out. I was going to say, we should point out, you're looking at like 4-person crew sizes, 8 people on turnover.
Yeah.
Do you get to be one of those first crews, Jeff?
No. I'm sure they'll say just what Semyonov said when I wanted to go to the Mir, show me the money.
Man, if you could stand being jammed into a Soyuz capsule from what I've seen of that, my hat's off to you, because I'd start losing my mind.
I was younger then.
Yeah. We should mention, because we've had him on the show before, by the way, as we talk about Voyager Space and Starlab, Dylan Taylor is the guy who really got all this started and is making it happen. And hats off.
And he's a Gerard O'Neill. He's a Gerard O'Neill fan. And this is all about, Voyager is a publicly traded company. We're focused on aerospace, defense, and space, and space, commercial space. But Dylan Taylor believes in the long-term future of humanity in space and has for decades.
Yeah. Before we close, I'd just like to get your opinion on this announcement that SpaceX is going to go public, which is a bit of a head scratcher to me because from everything I see and what Elon says he wants to do, this isn't something that shareholders are necessarily going to be in favor of.
I agree.
Kind of tying his shoelaces together here?
I agree. It's a bit of a puzzle. So the answer is, what does it tell us? Does it tell us that SpaceX needs more capital or Elon needs more capital? It seems to tell us that maybe it's both, or maybe that Elon needs more capital for some of the other projects he's working on. My hunch is that it's somewhere in between, that we're on the cusp of a total revolution with SpaceX on lowering the cost of transportation, on what's capable, what can be done. But it tells us something, and we have to think more about it. I have to think more about it as to what it means. He doesn't need, he doesn't need the capital the way you and I need capital. So it means something. But I agree with you that why would he go through that, though he's been enormously successful in Tesla and getting his way. And so he must know that he needs this capital. And the question for us is, does he need it for space or for some other project? That's the question.
Interesting. Or for Mars. Or for something else.
Or for the Million Man Optimus project. We shouldn't go without mentioning that you're also a book author. I know you mentioned Selling Peace Inside the Soviet Conspiracy that transformed the U.S. space program, but you also wrote a book. Well, you've written a book about Mars that is being published by Sentient at some point. But you also wrote a book about President Lincoln. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, Lincoln's Wrath. Man, so I moved to Washington. I told you there's a tie into space. Okay, I moved to Washington for the Office of Space Commerce and during the last year of the Reagan administration. And these are olden days, 1989. And I began to hang at the Library of Congress. And I began to read. I went and I saw I went out and realized how close we are to Manassas, to the Gettysburg, and I got fascinated by the Civil War or the war between the states. And so I began reading Civil War era newspapers. And then I got to one, and it was shut. It said closed by the government. I'm like, wow. Yeah, and so I looked it up, no Wikipedia in those days. I looked it up and found out that Lincoln had closed 2 or 3 newspapers that disagreed with his policy. So I looked into it more, and I found out it was 100 newspapers.
Oh my gosh.
And so I got utterly fascinated by this. I spent 2 years with a co-author, and we wrote a very solid piece, one of the first serious looks. I looked at John Hodgson, a publisher of the Jeffersonian, in Pennsylvania. He was a crusty, racist, who did not like Lincoln, believed in slavery, thought the war was going to just kill so many people. It was wasted. And the federal government shut him down. But he did what 99 other newspapers did not. He sued the federal government. He sued the Lincoln administration. And a jury of all Civil War veterans sided with the publisher. And they had to pay money. And the federal government had to reopen his press and pay him money, and that's why I love America.
Wow.
That's probably the last time somebody made a good amount of money off of publishing.
Man, you guys, I'm noticing a theme here, okay? I'm noticing
penury. Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting time. I mean, you've become a book author, so you know over the years how that's shifted, but that's for another show. But do you have anything new coming up? Because I have to say, and I don't say this very often because I used to do book coaching, and it's constantly bombarded by 25-year-olds wanting to write memoirs about their amazing life experiences. But you actually have an amazing life to talk about, and a Newspace memoir would be welcome, I think.
I should do it. I think now you're saying it, even folks at Voyager and stuff had said, hey, you should do this. And so I should. I keep starting collections of the anecdotes. But the point, for me, it has to make a point. And there's an irony that we've been so successful at what we all set out to do in the 80s, to make America where space is just another place to do business, that it's almost counterproductive to do a memoir at this point. We won. We did win. Okay? I mean, if you lose, then you write a book saying, this is what we need to do. But we've done it.
This is a fun adventure.
See, I got my agent here. Okay.
Well, I wrote a book years ago about the Curiosity rover and spent a couple of years shadowing the chief scientist, John Grotzinger. And he said a couple of times, I'm a little uncomfortable with you painting me as the hero of this. There's so many people. I said, you have to understand, the readers want to come stand and look over your shoulder and share in your glow of what you're doing. Yeah. And besides a good adventure story that you've got, you have a sense of humor, which isn't common in this industry. So I think we'd all appreciate that. But unfortunately, we have to go appreciate the end of our show here. So I want to thank you for coming, and everybody for staying with us for episode 189 that we like to call Privatizing Orbit. Jeffrey, can you remind us where we should go track what you're doing online?
That would be Voyager Technologies. I'm not on social media, except for LinkedIn. Everybody mocked me, but maybe I wasn't so foolish. So anyway, Voyager Technologies has it, and that's where you can track us. And when I have an upcoming memoir, we'll be out by 27.
Excellent.
I just made that up, so. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's how it works. Tarek, where are you flexing your online gaming muscles these days?
Well, you can find me at space.com. As always, on the socials, at Tarek J. Malik, and then if you like video games, I'm on YouTube at Spacetron Plays. Lots of fun stuff going on in Fallout and Fortnite. Very, very exciting time.
Well, who younger than 35 doesn't love video games, you child? And of course, you can always find me at pilebooks.com or at astromagazine.com or with nss.org. Remember, you can drop us a line at twit@twit.tv. We welcome your comments, suggestions, and ideas, just as Tarek so eloquently expressed last week in my absence. And we love getting your comments, and we will answer each and every email, and we'll even do it politely. New episodes published every Friday on your favorite podcatcher, so make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and give us reviews. We'll take whatever you got, but please make sure it's 5 of something, because that seems to be what tips the scale in our balance in our favor. You can also follow the Twit Tech Podcast Network at Twit on Twitter and on Facebook at twit.tv on Instagram. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jeffrey. This has been a real treat.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
We want to have you back to hear the rest of the darker side of your adventures, because I want to know if the Russians ever invited you to go out and urinate on the rocket before it went up, which is a big thing for them. Well, we'll save that for next time.
And also, if you're recruiting for first journalists on Starlab, just keep us in mind. So my schedule's open in 2029. So.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.